Hi friends! Exactly 3 years ago from today, the day I'm uploading this video, I came out as trans via a YouTube video. And today I'm going to be reacting to that coming out video, seeing what's changed over time, what stayed the same, and how far we've come since that life-changing day. Hello everyone, welcome back. My name's Maddie, and here on this channel we usually make videos about LGBT topics and mental health, specifically DID and OSTD. And let's just dive right into today's video. Today I'm going to be reacting to my coming out video from 3 years ago. I've got the video pulled up already, so let's go. In every single way, I'm the exact same person I've always been. Okay, I'm gonna stop already. I think it's really interesting that I was so adamant about being the exact same person I've always been, because like now I realize I've changed so much since I came out, since I started HRT, since I started transitioning. Like, so much has changed, and so I just think it's really interesting that past me was so adamant about like I'm exactly the same person I've always been, because like I was afraid that people would think that I was a different person, and now I'm so acutely aware of the fact that it's such a great thing that I'm a different person than who I used to be. But I value being the best, most authentic version of yourself that you can be. And so that's the purpose of this video. That's what I want to talk to you guys about today. Hello everybody, welcome back. This is like the 7th time I've tried to film this video. No, sorry. This has nothing to do with like me coming out or me being trans or anything, but like the opening, it made sense why my arm was hanging so low, because by then I was super tired, and I'm like, yeah, it makes sense that the angle would be like that. But no, okay, so context. I filmed the first part of the video last, and so it makes sense that my arm would be lower at that point in time because I was tired. But no, this is towards the beginning, and I'm like, why am I looking down at my camera? What am I doing? Anyway, irrelevant. Moving on. In all of my other tries, either the lighting wasn't right, or at one point my camera died. At one point I forgot to turn on my microphone, so that was annoying. So I'm currently walking my dog before the sun sets, so I wouldn't have to deal with artificial lighting, and I can just use natural lighting. So anyway, this is going to be my official coming out video, which this probably comes as a surprise to like none of you, but I am part of the LGBT community, and I feel like most people know this about me. Real though, like, I grew up in a fairly conservative Christian environment, and so the assumption is just that people are straight. But even in that environment, I'm pretty sure that people suspected that I was some flavor of LGBTQ+. Like, I don't think it really escaped most people's noticing that I wasn't cishet. But I think the assumption was that I was cis, and I think a lot of people thought that I was a gay man, and so this definitely probably threw that for a loop. But at the same time, my sister totally predicted that I was trans. Like, when I came out to her, she's like, yep, that makes sense. And I'm like, oh. So I don't know what people expected, but I definitely expected that people thought I was going to be somewhere in the LGBTQIA+ community. But they don't exactly know, like, where I fit, or what labels to use for me, what pronouns to use for me, etc., etc. So I wanted to make a video to clear up any questions about who I am, where I fit in, and all of that good stuff. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to start by talking about attraction and who I'm attracted to. I'm attracted to femininity, and I say that because while I am attracted to women, both cis or trans, I don't really have any preferences in that regard. I am also interested in non-binary people who just happen to be more on the feminine side of things versus the masculine side of things. Okay, so I think this is interesting because I distinctly remember filming this part, and like, I talked about how I was attracted to femininity, but I was so afraid to mention that I was attracted to feminine men as well. Like, I distinctly remember wanting to talk about, like, having a crush on Chris Colfer, who played Kurt Hummel in Glee. And I was like, no, you can't say that because they'll, like, question every aspect of who you are and every aspect of your identity, and they'll just tear you apart. And so I just casually glossed over that aspect of my attraction, and honestly, like, it wasn't until, like, a few months ago that I really started to acknowledge that that part of my attraction existed. So it's not like just a this is then and this is now type of thing. Like, I was in denial for a really long time, and it's only just now that I'm just gradually coming to terms with the fact that I might be attracted to, like, a percentage of a fraction of a percentage of the menfolk. I don't know. I typically use the label of bisexual because I'm technically attracted to more than one gender, not just women. Okay, so I say this. These are the words that I'm saying. I use the label of bisexual. But literally, like, the hashtags that I use for this video are hashtag coming out, hashtag trans, and hashtag lesbian. And I can't remember when exactly I put the hashtags in, but I just think it's funny that, like, I specifically mentioned being bisexual, and then, like, I kind of, like, went back over it and I was like, no, that's not what I meant, that's not what I said, this is who I really am. Pay attention to the hashtags, not what I'm actually saying with my words. I don't know, I think it's interesting. But I am attracted to femininity, so the label of lesbian could apply to me as well. Okay, there it is. So I do mention possibly being a lesbian in this video, which is still a term that, like, I want to use for myself because, like, then and now, the label of lesbian just seems like the epitome of femininity. Like, it's almost like if you use the label of lesbian, people can't deny your womanhood, which is not true. TERFs do it all the time, but, like, I honestly don't know what it is about the label of lesbian, but it really just feels gender affirming. Like, people of all genders can be bisexual, but only women and certain non-binary people can identify as lesbian. And so having this label of lesbian really, it's affirming, it's validating, but the more I think about it, the more I realize it's probably not accurate. But, you know, still, it's something that I'm still wrestling with, still going back and forth on, but I think it's interesting that this has clearly been somewhat of a struggle, not a struggle, but, like, somewhat of a challenge for me, at least, you know, for the past 3 years or so. Which brings me into the second, more difficult topic that I wanted to talk about in this video. I am non-binary. Oh. Fascinating. I didn't know that I came out as non-binary straight out of the chute. Like, I thought I came out as trans, and then later on was questioning whether or not I was non-binary, and then used the label of non-binary, because I didn't really use the label of non-binary a lot for myself until 10 Signs You Might Be Non-Binary came out, because I made that video, people thought that I was automatically non-binary, and so I kind of just adopted that particular label, and I'm like, yep, that works, sure, let's go with that. I actually did not remember that I had come out as non-binary 3 years ago. I thought I came out as trans, and so that's genuinely surprising. That's the label that I use most often for myself, which simply means that I don't identify 100% with masculinity or femininity. I identify with masculinity 0% of the time, not at all, literally at all. I was so adamant about people not thinking that it would in any way, shape, or form be acceptable to, like, use he, him pronouns or call me, like, by masculine descriptors. Like, I was so intently adamant that that wasn't a thing I wanted to happen. And I'm still that way. Like, I don't identify with masculinity at all, but I just think it's really interesting just watching how intentional I am about setting people straight about who I am and what my identity is. But in terms of femininity, I would say that it's anywhere from 40 to 60% on any given day. That's really low. 40 to 60%? Like, literally, if you ask me today, I'd say it's anywhere from 80 to 100% femininity. Like, the fact that I ranked femininity so low at the time, I'm wondering if I was scared to embrace all of my feminine aspects, or if it was just something that I realized throughout the process of transitioning that, you know, I am more feminine of center. I don't know. I just think that's interesting. That's a really low score I gave myself for femininity. And the rest of me is just neutral, I guess. Like, on any given day, I don't really necessarily feel like a man. Well, I never feel like a man, but I don't really feel like a man or a woman. I just feel like me. But I'm a lot more comfortable presenting as feminine with makeup, wig, feminine tops, pants, dresses, skirts, etc. I do identify more with the feminine end of things. Okay. So, I also think, that's definitely still true today. I'm definitely someone who, when I'm, you know, dolled up or presenting super femme, I feel most like myself. But at the same time, I am someone who, I know in the first video I ever published on this channel, I mentioned that I valued comfort above all else, and that's still true to this day. Like, if I'm wearing something, it's usually because it's comfortable, and yeah, that's just basically it. And so I don't wear makeup very often because it takes time. And honestly, half the time when I have makeup on my face, it's not comfortable. I don't like having it there. I like the way it looks, but I don't necessarily like the way it feels. So I don't really do my makeup. I don't really wear wigs all that often just because I have a big head and a lot of hair, and I can't often fit wigs on my head properly. But yeah, so I think that's interesting, just the way that I'm describing myself here, because I definitely do feel most comfortable being feminine of center. I think it's interesting that I was talking about, like, seeing myself as, like, not masculine or feminine, just me, because I know at one point in time I started saying that I started seeing myself as, like, partly female and partly agender, and so that changed in the past year to, like, partly female and partly gender queer, like, definitely still gendered, but not male or female. And now I'm honestly thinking that I might be a binary trans woman, so if you refer to me as a trans woman or as a woman, things like that, I'm totally comfortable with those descriptors, those labels. Okay, so I came out as non-binary. But at the same time, I was like, but if you want to describe me as a woman or a trans woman, that's okay. I'm wondering if I could talk to my past self. If she would say, yeah, it's okay if you call me a woman, but really I want to be called non-binary. Or if she would say, no, I want to be called a woman, but I'm scared of the backlash, so I'm coming out as non-binary instead. I honestly don't know. I don't remember. I don't have the answers, but I think it's interesting. I feel like I've said that a lot in this video. I think it's interesting, like, as my default. I think it's interesting, but I do. I genuinely think it's fascinating. I haven't watched this video in at least a year or two, and so it genuinely is surprising hearing some of the things I have to say in this video. Last few things. I use she, her, or they, them pronouns. Since when? Okay, so I remember when I was first telling friends and family that I thought I might be trans, I wanted to try out they, them pronouns to see how they fit, but I'm pretty sure by this point in time, I didn't want to be called they, them pronouns. Like, I was not comfortable with they, them pronouns. I didn't like the way they felt. And so I think it's fascinating. I honestly can't help but wonder if I included they, them pronouns as an option for me because I wanted the people I was coming out to feel more comfortable with my identity and what they could call me. I wanted them to have options. But no, I don't think I was ever comfortable with they, them pronouns. And so I think it's fascinating that my coming out video says, yep, use them for me. So, oh, that's weird.
I typically use she, her pronouns, but a lot of my friends do use they, them pronouns for me, and it's totally cool. But typically for myself, I'll use she, her pronouns, and those feel most comfortable for me.
Okay. So even then I was most comfortable with she, her pronouns. I still think it's weird that I was like, yeah, no, call me they, them, that's fine, because I don't remember that ever being true for me. I don't know, that's interesting.
As far as names go, I don't really dislike the name that's been given to me.
So this is like the epitome of me being like, no, for real, like, it's okay, call me whatever. I don't want my identity to be an affront to you or your understanding of who I am. Like, I'm literally giving people an excuse to dead name me, and that blows my mind. I feel like I was so adamant about people not being inconvenienced in the slightest way by my coming out, when in reality, like, it's okay for you to take up space and tell the world who you are. It's okay not to be the person who people think you are. And I feel like if I could, like, go back and talk to my past self, that'd be the main message I'd have for her. Is like, listen, it's okay. Like, you don't have to, like, you don't have to let people walk all over you. You can assert your identity and be yourself. Like,
it's a name that means a lot to me because I'm named after my dad, and my dad is someone who's important to me.
Like, yeah, sure, that makes sense. Like, you can, I don't, no, I'm sorry, no, it doesn't make sense. Like, oh, this is frustrating to me because, like, I'm so conscientious and so scared of hurting anyone's feelings or damaging anyone's perceptions of me that I'm stepping on my own toes in this video. And, like, thank goodness people took it in stride and still called me by, like, my actual name and my pronouns and whatnot. I struggle watching this part of the video because it's okay to ask people to change the way they understand you, and I don't think past me understood that. I don't think past me was comfortable with the idea of asking people to see me differently. Like, going back to the beginning of the video, I was so adamant about I'm the same person I've always been, and, like, when you're desperately clinging to the person you used to be, you don't give yourself the opportunity to grow into the person you're becoming. And I don't know at what point in time I allowed myself to grow into the person I've become, but I'm so glad that I did, and I hope that I continue to do so.
But the name I've chosen for myself is Maddie, or Madeline, and that's the name that moving forward I will be using for myself.
Yeah, you can use it for yourself, but it's also okay to say, this is my name, call me by my name. Like, there's so much going back and forth about, like, well, if you want to, if it wouldn't be, you know, an inconvenience for you, I don't know. Oh, wow. Oh, that has me feeling some kind of way.
And I think that's about it for this video. If you have any questions, if there's anything that I didn't answer in this video, please feel free to leave a comment down below. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you might have. If you have any other questions, LGBT related or not, please feel free to leave them down below. I love answering questions. If you have ideas for future videos, I'd love to hear those. Leave them down in the comments below. And for now, I am signing off. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye! This was a good idea in concept, filming outside where there wouldn't be, people running around and whatnot. But now we have the dogs, and the dogs are adorable, but the dogs are loud.
Alright, cool. Alright, so that's the video. I'm honestly left with a lot of feelings, wow, I know I'm making a reaction video, and reaction videos wouldn't work out very well if you remembered everything you said in a video, but wow, I've come a long way. I definitely have reached the point where I'm like, no, my name is Madeline, I use she, her pronouns, I am a trans woman, and I expect you to respect me and honor me, and I put my foot down. Even if I do so and my voice shakes and I'm trembling like a leaf, I ask for respect. And so I'm glad that I do that now, and if I could go back and talk to past me, I'd tell her, hey, the future is bright. You're going to find so many people who accept you for who you are, and it's okay to say, this is who I am, and demand that people honor that, because identity is sacred. Identity is something that's really, really special, and I think it's so important that we acknowledge that. So yeah, a lot's changed over time, but the one thing that hasn't changed is that I'm still doing my best to live a life of truth and authenticity. Whether it's being queer, being part of an OECD-1B system, or whatever else, I've decided that I don't want to live a life where I have to hide parts of myself. And here on this channel, I've decided that I want to help other people live life as their most authentic selves as well. If that sounds like your cup of tea, then go ahead and comment, and subscribe for more content just like this. But most importantly, remember that you're wonderful, and that the world is a better place because you're in it. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye!